I welcome my brief overview of experiential learning, or learning by experience. It could also be called learning by doing. It's a little bit more than just simply going through the process of doing something. And so when learning or an activity is categorized as experiential learning, it means that it's structured in a way that the learner is allowed to explore the subject matter and form a direct relationship with it, rather than just merely reading about the subject or listening to a lecture and indirectly being introduced to the concepts. Experiential learning requires that the learner plays an active role in the experience, and that the experience is followed by reflection, which is a key component to this form of learning. It allows for processing, understanding, and making sense of the subject matter for the learner themselves. There's several philosophers and educational experts who have weighed in and kind of formed this theory, and I'll talk about a couple of them. John Dewey is a philosopher from the early to mid 1900s who was instrumental in the developmental aspects of experiential learning and education. He felt that the experience was beneficial or educational if it led to further growth, had a benefit to the community, and the experience resulted in an affective quality leading to continued growth, curiosity, initiative, and a sense of purpose. He also was very keen on the fact that not every experience was educational, and that sometimes we could get stuck in a rut or taken off course if the education wasn't intentional in the focus on being educational as an end means. Along with Dewey, David Kolb would be considered another key component or key factor in the development of experiential learning. According to Kolb, this type of learning is defined as a process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. Knowledge results from the combination of grasping and transforming the experience. So again, there must be some reflective component to it. So physical examination of an ankle could be considered experimental, as each time this process is being done, the provider or examiner is going to learn more about the evaluation process and even about that patient. So it can be staged or it can be progressive in nature. Kolb definitely had 4 stages of the learning process as outlined on this slide. Was very keen on explaining these and how they all function together. According to Kolb, the concrete experience provides information that serves as a basis for reflection, and from these reflections the information forms abstract concepts. Abstract concepts then are applied to more active experimentation, and then that takes you back to another concrete experience. Again, this theory is based on teachable moments where the learner can explore their own personal experiences and formulate ideas or concepts, and then reapply these to the next opportunity to learn. This requires that the learner is reflective in their learning process and really forms their own theories and then tests these as they go through the process of learning. The key factor here, one of the key factors here, is to remember that there are teachable moments that happen, and there are teachable moments that we can create. And as educators, this is important for us to keep in mind really at all times, because we don't necessarily have to follow a curriculum or a certain set of progressive steps for education. These teachable moments can happen spontaneously, and if we allow or encourage the student to explore these, they certainly can gain from them. This has been applied in a few different aspects. The University of Iowa College of Public Health followed the philosophies of experiential learning and those of Dewey and Kolb, and actually have their students participate in one of 4 areas of growth opportunity. They explain it as opposed to learning that occurs in a traditional classroom. Experiential learning relies on the experience as a source of material and thoughtful reflection to facilitate learning. This occurs when carefully chosen experiences are supported by reflection, critical analysis, and synthesis. So as part of this master's degree in public health, the students are required to participate in one of the 4 public health research, where they enrich their educational experience by integrating coursework into real-life experiences. Public health internship, where the students have a chance to apply classroom lessons to the real-world public health issue, and they work with other professionals, organizations, and a local population. Service learning in public health, where the students integrate and synthesize and apply classroom learning in combination with academic coursework. And then global learning, where they take this to the global stage, encouraging students to explore different cultures, life experiences, and perspectives that are different from their own. This is early in the process at the University of Iowa, and although they've only had 1 or 2 classes go through this process, the early feedback shows that this is positive in really being able to get a good grasp and practical knowledge on public health in these 4 different areas, and they will begin a formal assessment in the near future. Another approach to this would be through the university in China. They take their radiography students or radiology students through different avenues of teaching or learning, evaluation of imaging. So they had 2 study groups where they had 40 students in the study group and 60 in the other, in the control group, and they challenged the traditional methods of teaching. Currently, most radiology education relies on textbook and computer media as PowerPoint and Word documents, etc., but they lack true interaction with the patient or the provider, knowing the patient history and some of the details. So in this medical school, they take their students and have divided them into 2 groups, with the study group having access to medical history, physical examination results, lab results, etc., and then they're allowed to freely view the images and provide descriptions and diagnosis within an hour or so of getting them. The students also share their findings in an open discussion, and the lecturer or the teacher in this situation gives details about the description, positive and negative encouragement, and allows them to come to a correct diagnosis, versus the control group, which simply goes through the typical reading of the images on a computer in PowerPoint and Word documents for support of their final diagnosis. Again, after 1 semester, they've been able to evaluate the outcomes of these 2 approaches, and although final exam scores didn't differ significantly, when the students were asked to give short answer or a description or more of a personalized answer, the study group scored significantly higher, and the medical faculty felt as though they were much more competent and much more of a working knowledge than their counterparts in the control group. Again, applying the concept of experiential learning, there are 4 steps: the concrete experience, where the learner has the opportunity to dive into and personally explore and experience the concept, followed by reflective observation. Abstract concepts are then formed and then applied again to the process or to the situation, which allows for new concrete experiences to occur, building on and creating a learning process. A colleague of mine, Valerie Rich, applied this to athletic training students, and certainly pointed out the fact that there are teachable moments where we can encourage or let our students explore more, so they have a chance to experience the process and the outcome, and then evaluate both of these in moving forward with learning any types of tasks, such as physical exam or monitoring of athletic events. And at the University of Montana, she certainly has notice that there has been an increase in the competency-based of her students with this active exploration or experiential learning concept. So there obviously are many aspects to this. It's not perfect in any way, but it does allow for what appears to be more of a personalized process of learning, and from the few studies and experiences that I was able to review, it certainly seems to be a positive way of approaching teaching and having students grasp ideas and concepts in their own personal way to take into their future endeavors.